more. Most judge the odds too nearly impossible. With a few exceptions, Jack Hasey from Bridgewater, Massachusetts had been living the good life in Paris.
I was 22. We're all young enough to try to do something.
Jack and 4 American expatriate friends organized the Iroquois Ambulance Corps and made the fateful decision to ship off to Finland. The Soviets were closing the circle on events that began in 1917, when a revolution swept aside Russia's imperial dynasty. That same year, after 600 years of Swedish domination and 100 years of Russian rule, Finland declared its own independence and established a European-style parliamentary democracy. In 1918, Finnish communists, supported by the Soviet Union, attempted to overthrow that government. They were defeated in a bloody civil war that elevated a Finnish aristocrat, Baron Carl Gustav Mannerheim. A former general in Russia's imperial army, Mannerheim's forces, with support from Germany, crushed the communists.
Mannerheim was a character out of another age. He was tall, he had eyes like gray ice, he looked every inch the field marshal, but there was something almost 18th century about him.
Having served in the Tsarist army before the collapse of the Russian Empire, he also knew the Russian psyche.
He was born of the Swedish-Finnish aristocracy. In fact, he did not learn how to speak or read Finnish until he became the commander-in-chief of the Finnish army. And I have heard recordings of Mannerheim's Finnish, and the best that can be said about it is that it's at least better than Winston Churchill's French, but not much.
In the summer of 1939, as the threat of war grew, Mannerheim urged the nation to strengthen its defensive line across the strategic Karelian Isthmus.
And this certainly was one of the factors that saved Finland, because it gave Finland's army about 4 months to get organized, settled, refresher training.
Ja lähdimme silloin Kannakselle 10. päivänä lokakuuta niin kutsuttuun YH:hon ja olimme siellä. Minä olimme Kannaksella silloin. Junakuljetuksen aikana olin junakuljetuksen päällikkönä ja Viipurin asemalla minulle toi karjalaisnainen, vanha mummo, toi minulle kukkasen rintaan ja kiitti, että tulimme silloin Kannakselle puolustamaan heitä, jossa ei ollut vielä yhtään mitään sillä kohdalla, missä me taistelimme. Ei taisteluhautoja eikä mitään esteitä, vaan me rakensimme sinne kaivamalla taisteluhaudat ja sitten liikkelankaesteet, teimme korsut.
For decades, Finland's leaders had refused to allocate funds for the nation's defense.
Meillä oli 32 vanhaa Renaulta, ei enää taistelukelpoista, ja 32 Vickersvaunua Englannista, ilman tykkiä, ilman tähystyslaitteita, ilman radioita. Meillä oli yksi vaunu kunnossa.
The Finnish Air Force was equally outdated and under strength.
Mutta ne koneet olivat vanhoja englantilaisia Ripoon koneita, jotka lensivät 160 kilometriä tunnissa, ja venäläisillä oli 370 kilometriä tunnissa kulkevat hävittäjät.
A widespread shortage of ammunition made the situation more grave for the outgunned Finns.
What do you do in a small country where there isn't very much ammunition? You use knives. And already in the Finnish history there has been puukko. And puukko was used for a lot of things, and now it became very handy as a defense mechanism. Because believe me, when you get that under your ribs, it doesn't feel good.
In an often unforgiving climate, Finns fell back to the survival skills they learned as children. It was part of a character quality summed up in the word sisu.
It means that personal kind of ability or spirit that every Finn is supposed to have, that when things go wrong, you don't give up.
In August of 1939, the balance of power in Europe suddenly shifted. Communist Russia and Nazi Germany, mortal ideological enemies, suddenly became allies.
The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was the key that really made the war possible, because it gave Stalin a free hand in those parts of Europe that the treaty allowed him to move into.
On September 1st, Germany invaded Poland from the west, utilizing a new form of warfare called blitzkrieg. On September 17th, Soviet troops launched a similar attack from the east. The two armies met at the Bug River. In October, the Soviets demanded and gained concessions for military bases in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Finland's turn came last.
They could see that this was not just a war to change the borders a couple of kilometers. This was a total war where Stalin intended to occupy and dominate Finland.
The Finns refused to accept our conditions, so we were left with no choice but to decide the question by war.
On November 28th, the Soviet Union broke off diplomatic relations. On November 30th, Soviet troops crossed Finland's borders. Finland's entire army, a total of 300,000 soldiers, including reserves, faced the world's largest army of more than 2 million soldiers, with many millions more in reserve. The first week of fighting demonstrated the power of Soviet armor. Finnish troops were pushed back. Shock and fear accompanied retreat and defeat. They searched for a way to beat back Soviet armor.
Our platoon leader informed us we were about to receive secret weapons that could blow up and burn any enemy tank. It did not take long until the promise was fulfilled.
The Molotov cocktail is probably the most famous poor man's weapon system of the 20th century, and it was named after Stalin's foreign minister, Molotov. If you got up behind the tank and dropped a bottle of flaming gasoline into those air ducts, the flaming gasoline would get sucked into the engine, the tank's fuel would blow up, and for the price of a half a gallon of gas, you could destroy an enemy tank.
Toinen oli sitten nämä kasapanokset, ja siinä oli oltava vielä lähempänä, koska se ei ollut sitä pystynyt heittämään oikeastaan paljon 10-15 metriä pitemmän matkaa, että se oli sitten se toinen torjuntakeino. Ja kolmas, jota myöskin käytettiin, jolloin vieläkin hurjemmat miehet täytyy sitten olla sen suorittamassa, pantiin halko.
There was one state trooper who was decorated for actually immobilizing a Russian tank with a crowbar. He pried the treads off by brute force, whereupon his partner came out with a satchel charge and blew it up.
I was full of fear and full of care because of father who was in the war. And then I felt that I had to be worried all the time because it was like giving strength to our men. We were called home front.
Women had to do all those things what the men used to do when they were at home. So they had to work in the factories. At that time our country had lots of small farms. If the husband was taken to the front, the woman there had to do all the work. And as also 50,000 horses were taken to the front, which just they couldn't work there without the horses. So from many houses the horse was taken, so the woman had to work almost as a horse also.
My grandmother and I were part of the women's auxiliary, which was called Lotta's Värld, which is based on a poem during one of the wars that Finns fought. And Lotta's Värld was the name of the woman that took care of the soldiers.
Lotta's Värld, organized